So it's a nice cool morning down on the plot today, and it's just before our mini heat waves due next week. So it's an ideal time to check up on things and get a few things planted. So to start things off, what we're going to do is to have a quick check-in on the tomatoes. Now they're all doing pretty well. They're all growing up and putting on some new growth. However, if I look at, there's a couple here. This particular one here, down here, and this is the probably worst offender down here. So you see on this one, bring the camera in. On this particular plant here, you can see it's putting on lots of new growth, but you can see these bottom leaves are starting to purple off at the bottom. You see that? And they get lots of purple patches. Now, and so on some of the other ones, the leaves aren't quite as green as I'd like. So, reason for the purpling is the plant's not taking up enough phosphorus from the soil. And the slight yellowing of some of the lower leaves is also that the magnesium isn't being taken up from the soil. Now the soil should be good, and it's fine. I mean, if you look at this, is the same soil that was used for these pak choy and the lettuce down there, so there's plenty of nutrients in the soil. The problem here is that the temperature is just too low at night at the moment still. I think if we do this again, what we'll do is not put the strings in so early, and we'll use some cloths over the top to keep them warm in the evenings. The problem is that in the daytime the temperatures do get up to 20 odd degrees, but they're still dropping down into sort of like 5 or 6 degrees in the evenings. Now tomatoes really do like it to be about 10 degrees minimum, which is about 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And what's actually happening with these tomatoes, I believe, is the fact that it's in the evenings when it's too cold. If the soil isn't warm enough, the plants aren't able to pick up the phosphorus and the magnesium from the soil as easily. And then what the plant's doing is it's actually promoting this top growth, and it's pulling the nutrients out of the bottom leaves and the older leaves to fuel the new leaves. Now they should be okay. We're getting it's warming up next week. In the meantime, what we might do is just give them a little bit of a light wheat tomato feed to give them a bit of phosphorus and magnesium, and also might give a little bit of a spray over with some Epsom salts. That'll help with the magnesium take up as well. But other than that, they are looking not too bad. The two that were over here, these two, we ended up losing one of them. The other one's quite weak, so we ended up putting some substitutes in. And again, they're doing okay, but they're not the greatest at the moment. But hopefully we'll, as I say, with a little bit of tender loving care and a few bit warmer temperatures next week, they should pick up. But we'll be keeping an eye on them and seeing how they go. So if you've got tomato plants that are purpling, it's normally it can be overwatering if you're overwatering them. But normally it's a nutrient deficiency. They're not staying warm enough, and they're getting too cold. In contrast, the ones that are in the greenhouse, where it stays a couple of degrees warmer than it does in the polytunnel overnight, aren't showing as much effect. So that's a pretty sure sign that actually it's the cold that's affecting these rather than the actual nutrients in the soil. The cold is stopping them actually pulling those nutrients out the soil and into the plant. But the actual stems are thickening up and they're all looking good, so that's a good sign. Over on the pepper stand over here, again they're looking okay. Again, I think once the temperatures rise up a bit, they'll shoot off a little bit. It's obviously a little bit stressed because this one here is already starting to put out some flowers. So normally I'd expect to put a lot more growth before it started putting flowers up. So that's sort of sign of that maybe it's a little bit stressed and it's trying to put out flowers before it thinks it's going to die. But everything else is looking quite good. They just need a little bit more extra heat. Down here on the apple tree, a lot of the buds have done, and you can see that actually now they're starting to, they're just starting to swell. So we should have a nice crop of apples, but bearing on the number of flowers that are on there, we are going to have to thin that out because that tree cannot support the number of flowers and apples that are currently growing on it. And we're going to pick some of that rhubarb later before it goes too thick and hard. Let's have a quick check in on the brassicas that we put in the other day. Incidentally, all the potatoes now coming up. These are all the potato pots, signs of life from all of those. Single potatoes are doing all right. Dahlias we've put in the other week are starting to sprout out. These are doing better than the ones in the back garden actually, and I think it's because they had that little bit of a boost to get them going in the greenhouse before we put them out. And all the brassicas we put in, broccoli and the cabbage, all doing fine. Now, if you look at this, you're thinking, whoa, he's got those quite densely planted. I did that for a reason, and that's because what I'd rather have is I would rather have, when it comes to broccoli and cabbage and cauliflowers and things like that, I'd rather have a lot of small heads than a few plants with massive heads. I'm not growing for a prize show here. I'm growing so that actually we can have them and eat them. And it's far easier to come down and just pick off a small head and then let that plant grow on to produce other little mini heads in it than it is to actually create some humongous, great big broccoli plant with massive heads on it. So we do plant a little bit closer than you normally would, or I tend to, and that's really because I like to keep a lot of small plants rather than massive prize-winning plants. In terms of these other two beds, get these prepped hopefully today or the next couple of days, and get some of this out. I can see that actually some of the stuff that we hoed down has actually re-rooted itself, so we just need to hoe that out. And all the onions and everything else are looking a lot better for the rain we've had, and it's all doing pretty good. A little bit of weeding still needs to do. It's constantly weeding these beds. And down here on the strawberry bed, they all seem to be doing reasonably well. So we shall, as we said, we shall wait until we get fruit on them and just see if they get enough sun when they're here next to the polytunnel. But now, so let's get on now and get some planting done, because I want to get some parsnips in and I want to get the French beans in today. For the French beans, we're going to use the same principle that we did for the peas and when we planted those in the Manche 2, and that is we've grown them on in these pieces of guttering, and we're just going to dig a trench in the soil here. And one thing I've forgot to mention when we did the peas, and that was that what we tend to do is when we've done the before we put the peas in, that is we get a few of the beans and I just put those down in the bottom. And the reason for that is that if anything happens in terms of damage to the ones that we're putting in, we've got some more in the ground, and also acts as succession planting, in that if we end up getting good growth off of these ones, when they get towards the end of the season and they're a bit tired and they're not producing very well, that means that the new ones that are in the ground hopefully will have germinated and come up, and they'll be like a few weeks later than these ones, which will mean that actually we'll get a set of new beans coming up through where the old beans are. Now this is the original tray that we had where we got reasonably poor germination, so I'm just going to end up, so we had a smaller lot there, so I'm just going to end up going down into there and just hoiking out the few sections where we've got beans growing. I'll take those ones out. And then just take this little one out the back, find some room for him. And then just tip that soil. Now I would normally leave the French beans a week or two before I put them in the ground until they're a bit taller. But we'll be putting some fleece around just to keep them a bit warmer. And the one thing I want to avoid is the fact that if it's going to get really hot next week, it will literally be too hot for them in the polytunnel. Now I could take the tubes out and keep bringing them outside during the day, but again that's a faff. I have to keep coming back down, and in the evening come back down again and take them in. It's far easier to actually just harden them off out here with a little bit of fleece wrapped round, just to keep them from feeling the cold. And as I say, that it should be next week, by the time we get to next week, it should be like 10 degrees or so in the evenings anyway, so they should be fine. So I'm going to get a little bit of fleece and just wrap that round. So I've just got a bit of old fleece that I've was left over for when we had the onions and garlic were first in the bed, and it got a little bit ripped to death by the badgers, so just ripped it off into some strips. We'll just wrap that around there, put a clip on it, and that'll have two effects really. One of them it'll keep a little bit of warmth in there in the evenings. Also it'll deter the pigeons from getting at them. And also what it does is it encourages the plants to grow up through to search out the light from there. So there we go, all nice and cozy in there. We'll get the other set planted in behind us. So this year I'm going to have this bed here as my parsnip bed. I've given it a bit of a rake over and just to fine tilt it up. I need to leave a little bit of space at this end because I plan to grow one of the squashes up that end, but I'm just going to create some little furrows in here and put our parsnip seeds in. Now, as you know, planting parsnip seeds is pretty straightforward. I thought while I'm doing this I'd give an opportunity to have a chat about just the allotment and gardening and everything else in general. A lot of people ask me, say, well, what got you into doing the allotment and everything else? No, it's hard to say really. My parents, they won't mind me saying they're not particularly into their gardening. They'll go to the garden centre and get some nice plants for their garden at home, but they're not great into actually sowing and growing from seed. I think my first memory of gardening and everything else was when I was, I couldn't have been much older than probably 5 or 6 really. And that was at my grand's, which is my mum's house. They obviously were brought up during the war and the dig for Britain and type sort of era. So they always had a vegetable patch in their back garden, and I remember as a kid going into the garden there, and they used to have peas and carrots and beans and stuff like that, and just picking those off and eating them straight off the out of the ground, a little bit of dirt, and I think that's probably my first memory of actually growing vegetables and everything else. And then following on from that later on, my dad's father, my Gramp, he was always a very keen gardener. I mean, he used to grow odd, like sort of tomatoes, cucumbers and stuff like that, but he was primarily into his flowers, and several occasions he actually won the local home garden competition for best garden and stuff like this. And he was very much into his plants, and I always remember going down to his greenhouse and just that smell, and I think it still lives with you today, that reminiscent smell of in a greenhouse, the smell of the tomatoes and everything else, and especially just after it's been watered, that smell of the freshly watered soil. And I think that smell always triggers nostalgic memories. Now, as I say, he used to produce like trays and trays of flowers, and I can always remember whenever it was this time of year, coming back from a visit to Nanny and Grampy's with trays and trays of flowers that were all ready to be put in the ground, and they used to just do them in those sort of 12-inch by 6-inch trays, and I can always remember almost to the point where there were so many roots on them that they actually you used to have to get like a little knife out to cut them out in little chunks to put them into the ground. And so I think the combination of those two memories of having vegetables from my grand's back garden, and then also my Gramps' love of gardening, and just those old time sort of days is really what got me into gardening and growing. And as I say, these allotments are just around the corner from my house, so it's a really convenient way of actually getting out and about, especially now since we've had lockdown for COVID, and a lot of the time I'm sort of working from home as opposed to in the office. It makes it more convenient for me to just get out, and it's a good opportunity during the day and a good excuse, and it forces me to get out of the house. Otherwise I'll be sitting in the house 24/7, just getting up, going to work in the office upstairs, and then not getting out and getting any fresh air. So it's good. It's a good exercise in that. And also just generally, I mean, I have to admit, I've had this allotment for about 15 years, and I think like everybody, for the first couple of years we were really keen, and we got everything done and raised beds and everything else. And then the kids were quite young, which meant that actually getting out and down here was a bit of a bind and a bit of a chore. So there's a period of about 5 or 6 years after that when we didn't grow much more than runner beans or pumpkins down here. And it's only in the last sort of 5 years that we've really started to get on and actually make full use of all the space we've got. And as I say, in this last year we've got the extra plot. So that's my sort of backstory in terms of my allotment. I mean, in terms of just generally why I do it and why I enjoy it, I think there's a general satisfaction really in the slowness of it really. Life, it can be pretty hectic at times, and tight deadlines and everything else at work and at home, and things needing to be done and stuff like that. So there's a certain satisfaction in the fact that you put a parsnip seed like this in the ground, and we're unlikely to see any signs of life from those for like maybe several weeks. We might see a few little seedlings popping up, and then it will be several months, well into the end of the year, before we're actually harvesting those. So there's a certain level of slowness and relaxation in terms of actual making you patient and making you having to wait. And also there's the sort of just the caring nature of it, in the fact that you need to look after plants, you need to weed them, you need to tender them, and there's some satisfaction in when you get to harvest them, how you've gone on with it. So I find it quite a relaxing thing to do, and it's certainly sort of quite a large part of my hobbies and spare time is coming down here, enjoying nature and looking after the plot. I'd be interested to know why you like your allotments and everything else. So if you want to leave a comment down in the below, just to let me know how you got into it and why you enjoy it. Now, one of the things I'm going to do now is just pick off a bit of this rhubarb. Just get rid of these, come cut those heads down in a minute. So we're going to just harvest a little bit of this. I always leave it too late, and then it spoils or it goes tough. So I'll make sure I get some rhubarb off of it this year and make some use of it. And also it does the plant good, because otherwise it just gets overgrown and congested. I'll take off some of these smaller shoots as well. Look at that, baby. Look at that. Rhubarb is just the best, one of the best plants ever. It's delicious. You can use it in so many different ways. Crumbled, or just stew it, or make jams or preserves from it. And it literally is the easiest thing to grow. Once it's established, it will just come back year after year after year, and there's very little maintenance you need to do with it. I mean, we don't even, this stuff has got roots that go down absolutely miles. When we lifted and we used to have another rhubarb plant here, when we lifted and separated that one to plant it over in that area, I mean, the roots were down this far, and I left one of them in a pot around by the side of the brassica cage, and when I came to move it last year, it turns out that actually just root had just drilled itself straight through the bottom of the pot into the ground below. So the roots are really deep down, and they will just find water and nutrients in even the driest conditions. So I think we'll just take that one there, because that's a nice pinky one. And a couple more bits, and that nicely thins it out. Come around this side, careful not to stand on the onions that we put in there. There we go, that's a nice set of nice set of rhubarb. Trim the tops off, put them in the composter, take those home, do something with them. I need to get on with loads of other stuff today, so I'm going to need to sort out the spinach bed, have a quick look in the greenhouse, just sort through there, see if any of the other seedlings need potting on. Certainly I know that the squash and some of the pumpkins that we planted the other day are bursting out of their pots, so they need potting on. So I'm going to be getting on with that. And but whatever you're up to this weekend, have a lovely time, and don't forget, next week, make sure that your greenhouses and polytunnels are staying cool, and stay safe out there in the sun. It is going to be very hot. Wear sunscreen if you're out in it for any long period of time, and for any of those people that have got pollen allergies, don't forget to take your sort of anti-allergens, because the oak tree pollen is going to be really, really high over the next few days. So enjoy yourselves, and I will see you again next time.